Hi, I'm Darren McDonald. Sudbury.com has invited candidates in Sudbury and Nickel Belt running in the provincial election to drop by to chat with us about each of their party's platforms. Today we're joined by Bill Crumplin, the Green Party candidate in Nickel Belt. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Darren. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in. I want to start right off with a question about the Green platform, specifically the plan to close the Pickering nuclear plant, which currently supplies 15% of Ontario's power, employs 3,000 people. Now, obviously, shutting it down would create a significant amount of jobs as well. But I wonder how much would that cost? That was something I couldn't find in the platform. And as a follow-up to that, for the cost, and also if we want to get more people into electric cars, shouldn't we be maintaining that sort of supply?
That's a pretty good question. I, to be honest, can't remember how much money. It is in the platform. I read it last night, but I don't have all those numbers memorized. But it's a significant amount. I remember it being billions as opposed to millions that could be saved by closing it down. Essentially because I think in August of this year, its license expires, so there has to be a significant amount of work done. There would be a lot of jobs in decommissioning it, but for how we would replace it, I think we need to think a little outside the box instead of thinking of our own hydro, say with Pickering. What would be beneficial for us is to buy excess power from Quebec and/or Manitoba, and I think the price per kilowatt hour out of Pickering is around 16 cents a kilowatt hour, something like that. Buying electricity from Quebec, I think it saves us 5 cents a kilowatt hour if we were to do that. So we could save substantial amount of money and use power that's actually generated by hydro forms.
Yeah, now have your party done the calculations? Can Hydro-Quebec replace the 15% generating capacity that would come from Pickering, and also supply enough power long-term? If people are in electric cars, there's going to be a lot more demand for electric, moving away from fossil fuels, which is what we want. But do we have enough supply for that?
Again, to be honest, I haven't seen anything with respect to how many kilowatt hours are available and what the projections might be for electric cars. But what the party wants to do is they're thinking of both buying electricity from Manitoba and Quebec, so it's not just the Quebec power. But at the same time of doing that and winding down nuclear, the idea is to build up our wind and solar and geothermal. So the goal is to be 100% renewable energy for the province. So it's not a situation where we want to be dependent upon Quebec or Manitoba forever. It's sort of a short-term period over which we can start to set up our own renewable energy resources.
What about, more broadly speaking, nuclear power in Canada and in Ontario has an outstanding safety record. It doesn't produce fossil fuels, certainly produces radioactive waste that we're struggling to address. But in terms of emissions, it's relatively clean power. Why don't you see a future for nuclear power, I guess? I think
it's just a discomfort people have after some of the things that have gone on globally. And I've talked to a number of engineers who say that the track record of nuclear is very safe, and it is. But if we have one mistake with nuclear, it's catastrophic. So I think it's sort of a disquiet that the public has. And again, what do we do with the waste? It's a big problem. There was, a number of years ago, there was the idea that we were going to ship it up to Kirkland Lake, and that didn't go well. So what do we do if we rely more on nuclear energy? There's just going to be more waste.
Okay. Another element of the Green platform involves subsidizing municipal transit, 50%, the cost of municipal transit, 50% for cities in Ontario. Now, unless I read it wrong, it says that this could be done for about $800 million a year, which leads to two questions. That seems low. Is that realistic? And if it is correct, why aren't we doing that now?
Second part of the question first. I think, again, generally the average Ontarian just is in love with his or her car, and they're more interested in more roads as opposed to having more transit. I know when I take the bus to campus, for instance, I'm fortunate I'm on the 500 route, so I walk to the station and go straight up to campus, and life is great. And a lot of students are surprised to see a professor riding the bus. So that there's something in our mindset that I think society really isn't quite ready for. In terms of the pricing, $800 million sounds pretty low. I will agree with that. There are different aspects of the platform where the party sees that they could move money from certain forms of taxation now. But again, where extra money is going to come from that, I don't recall reading it in the platform either, Darren.
I also have some questions about the Fair Hydro Plan. You guys call it the Unfair Hydro Plan. If I read the platform correctly, you're going to basically cancel it and charge consumers the actual cost of electricity. Now, in a place like Nickel Belt, you know, where it's very cold and some people are pretty remote, being able to afford electricity is almost a human right. So I wonder, you know, is there a plan to help those people, or are just Ontarians going to have to actually face up to the fact that, you know, electricity costs a certain amount and they have to pay it?
Well, this is where the Green Party differentiates from the other parties. We're not going to lie. The cost of electricity in this province is, despite what we like to think, is cheap. We're not paying full cost for electricity. So by getting rid of something like the Pickering, and we can reduce the kilowatt charge from, say, 16 to 11 cents a kilowatt hour, that's part of what we could do, part of our plan. But we go back to the days of Adam Beck and you know, removing municipal hydro generators, you know, to make it a provincial game. And I think that was really good in 1903 or 8 or whenever it was. But today I'm not sure that it really serves us well, because one of the things that the Green Party is hoping to do is not only be 100% renewable energy, but to actually give local communities the chance to generate their own power for their own needs, and therefore have a better say and better control into what it's going to cost to produce it. And then at the same time, we're very much encouraging retrofitting houses, making them more energy efficient. But electricity, you know, people, the other three main parties are saying they're going to do this, that, or the other thing. All that's doing is mortgaging our electrical use to future generations, because it's going to be paid at a higher rate down the road.
Okay, your party also says it would stop subsidizing businesses that pollute and direct the $3.1 billion towards tech jobs. Can you give me an idea of how this would translate into jobs in this area? You know, what sort of potential do you see in the north for that kind of funding?
I think we can just look up the road a little bit to Rethink Green and Green Economy North. They have been doing great strides working with local businesses, getting businesses on board to be energy efficient, and to look at their bottom line in terms of what electricity costs. So those sorts of programs, I think, would work very well across the north. Rethink Green Economy North was the first such program north of, I think there was one in Ottawa, but everything else is around the Golden Horseshoe. I was part of the board of directors at that point in time. There might have been some more have come on board the last couple of years. Yeah. But those are the kind of initiatives that I think would really be good. And as we invest that way, there are different things, like we look at the film industry here. That's sort of a high-tech business, and if we were able to produce our own power here at reasonable rates, like maybe even cheaper than what they would get off the grid, that might bring people here as well.
Okay, well, let's go back to that. Exactly how would municipalities take more control over power generation? Are you talking about giving them control over the solar panels, or just how is that translate in practical terms?
Well, I think one of the problems right now is that electricity is provincially generated and controlled. Local communities, I can think of a couple of communities there in Muskoka, for instance, where they have a lot of water power, like actual water, and they used to have generating facilities. Bracebridge still does, I think. So we could take advantage of what the natural environment offers. Sudbury, maybe it would be wind here for us because we do get a lot of wind. But it would be up to the municipality to decide which renewable source would work the best. Maybe we use geothermal. I know we're using geothermal heating in the Valley Living with Lake Center on Ramsey Lake, part of the university. There's also, pardon me, the planning on campus to have their own electrical generating site on campus. I don't know the details, but I know it's one of the things that they're looking at because public institutions are supposed to cut their greenhouse gas emissions as well.
Now, where would that leave Hydro One exactly? Or even Greater Sudbury Utilities? Like, how would that structure work?
I don't know how that might work. I hadn't actually thought of it, Darren, and it's not in the platform. But I would, given some of the basic philosophies of the Green Party, I feel that there's nothing wrong with public-private partnerships, and I could see that something could happen between the municipality and, say, Sudbury Hydro. But it would be, sort of left. It wouldn't be such a top-down decision that we have now. It would be up to the local communities.
The policy that the Greens have come out with has something called mining public return and aggregate levies. Now, in this area, you see something that says mining. Mining is obviously a key industry here. And I wonder if you can flesh that out a bit for me, and what would it mean for mining companies here?
Okay, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, there's a revenue, $3 billion in revenue that your policy says you will raise from something called the mining public return and aggregate levies. There's also $5.7 billion from road pricing and $8.26 billion from a parking levy. And I mean, from what I understand, the parking levy is, basically something employers would be charged if they have parking for their employees.
Okay, I actually don't recall reading that in the platform, Darren. Okay. Yeah, the only thing about parking that I recall is what they're thinking of doing in Toronto with respect to paying for the mass transit developments. Parking levies. A congestion fee, so that if you drive your car downtown, you're going to be have to pay more for that. The only thing that I can think of that might be close to that is the idea that we want more royalties for people who are working in the north, whether it's logging, mining, whatever the case may be, so that so that we up here northerners actually reap more of the benefit. And part and parcel of that is working much more closely with First Nations people.
Okay, I've been grilling you on your party's platform. I'd like to give you a chance to maybe give your assessment of what the more traditional parties have proposed in terms of the environment. The Liberals, the Tories, the New Democrats. What direction do you see them going, and are you encouraged by what you hear from any of the sort of traditional parties?
Not at all. The reason I'm offering myself up for this is because I feel very strongly that none of the traditional parties are doing anything more than paying lip service to the environment. I feel very strongly that it's time we put the environment front and center. One of the things that I've said to my students is I think they're going to be okay. I think their generation is going to be okay, but I worry for their kids. And I think we are that close to, climate catastrophe. Things are going to change so drastically, and all you have to do is look at insurance rates for things like flooding and wildfires, and those are really, I think, significant markers that the insurance industry knows the trouble we're in. So I am doing this because I want people to talk about the environment, think clearly about climate change, and realize that we're not just running into mortgaging our future with respect to finances, we're actually mortgaging the environment on future generations, and that's not fair.
Bill, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Darren.
Remember to cast your vote on June 7th and head to Sudbury.com after the polls close as we bring you live coverage from your local candidate headquarters during election night.